Hi there. In today's video I'm going to talk about how Hitler was able to turn Germany from a democracy to a dictatorship in roughly 18 months after he was voted in as Chancellor on the 30th of January 1933. I set this question to my pupils quite recently, and I set it in the assumption that there was luck and skill involved, and we will address that today. But the general consensus is that Adolf Hitler was reactionary. He didn't plan that much, he just reacted to the events that unfolded and was very good at doing that. So let's start with Hitler being voted in as Chancellor. It's the 30th of January. He's not voted, he's chosen to be Chancellor by von Papen and Hindenburg. And you could argue it's one of the largest mistakes in political history, thinking that they could control Adolf Hitler. And they had a fair point. There was only 4 members of the Nazi Party, including Hitler, in the cabinet. Von Papen was the Vice-Chancellor, and Hindenburg had control of the army, and Hitler ultimately was in a weak position. Very few chancellors lasted longer than a year, so I think at the time von Papen and Hindenburg were right to assume they could control him. Well, events unfolded very quickly. In February 1933, the Reichstag fire breaks out, and Maurits van der Lubbe is caught there. He's a communist, which is really important because there's one thing that people fear is a communist takeover. After the Spartacist uprising in 1919, and ultimately the creation of a communist Bavarian state in Bavaria, again in the 1920s, people are very worried about communist takeover. Middle class, farmers and rich industrialists are incredibly worried about communists taking over. They've seen what happened in USSR and what happened they did not want in Germany. So the fact that Maurits van der Lubbe, a communist, burnt down the Reichstag wasn't great, and it was a perfect opportunity for Hitler to react and take advantage of that situation. Now, we won't go into the conspiracy theories regarding whether or not it was the Nazis who started the Reichstag fire. It was certainly, it's a very good coincidence for them. A lot of people point the finger to Goering and say that ultimately he started it. That's not really up for debate. What is up for debate is how the Nazis used the Reichstag fire to gain more power. Now, the first thing Hitler did the next day, on the 28th of February, was to ask President Hindenburg, for emergency powers, which he was more than happy to give Hitler. The communist threat was exacerbated by Maurits van der Lubbe burning down the Reichstag. So Paul von Hindenburg gives Hitler emergency powers. And with Hitler as Chancellor, the March elections were really important. The Nazis put the entire state into getting as many votes as possible. So you could argue it's relatively surprising that they only got 44% of the votes in the March 1933 elections. Hitler was relatively disappointed by this. He thought he would have achieved more than 44% of the votes. However, with other parties, other nationalist parties, they were able to achieve roughly 52%, which gave them majority in the Reichstag. However, Hitler wants to do away with the Weimar democracy. He makes that very obvious. And so he needs the enabling law. The enabling law would allow Hitler to pass laws without the Reichstag. But to pass the enabling law, you need 66% of the Reichstag votes, which was unforeseeable in the early stage of the Weimar Republic. So how did Hitler get 66% of the votes to pass the enabling law, or the enabling act, as it's also called? Well, by hook and by crook, Hitler intimidated other political parties, such as the Centre Party and the SPD, to basically coax them along to voting for it. Now, the SPD never voted for the enabling law, but the Communist Party was stopped and prevented from sitting in the Reichstag. So the Centre Party decided to vote with the Nazis because they felt that cooperation was better at that stage than to go the way of the Communists, which was being banned and arrested. So with other political parties, such as the DMVP and the Catholic Centre Party, Hitler was able to get over 66% of the Reichstag to vote to basically dissolve itself. The only political party that did not vote for the Enabling Act was the SPD, who voted against it. Well, after that, Hitler has no worries really. He can make any laws that he so wishes. Paul von Hindenburg, as president of the Weimar government, can do very, very little. Hitler now has complete control over the Reichstag and making laws for the next 4 years, and he has to keep voting in the Enabling Act every 4 years, and obviously no one's going to vote against it because very soon, very quickly after that, political parties are banned. In May 1933, trade unions are banned. They replace them on the 2nd of May, and the Nazi the Nazi trade union of the German Labour Front comes in later. Political parties are banned in July. The only political party you're allowed to be part of is the Nazi Party. So all political opposition really ceases to exist from mid-1933. There's no one really standing in his way. Paul von Hindenburg still retains control of the army, but to all intents and purposes, Hitler's a virtual dictator, even by this stage. So there are a couple of obstacles still in Hitler's way, and it's important to understand this. He reacts quite well to the Reichstag fire, but uses a lot of political skill to engineer the situation. Well, in June 1934 is the Night of the Long Knives, where Hitler is worried about the SA, the Sturmabteilung, which is the paramilitary version of the Nazi Party, who are incredibly powerful at this stage. There's close to 4 million members of the SA, or the SA as some people also call it. So Hitler's worried because they ultimately owe their allegiance to Ernst Röhm, who is the leader of the SA, and one of Hitler's closest allies, who was there with Hitler in the Munich Putsch and was on trial with Hitler. However, Hitler's a bit worried. Hitler is concerned about a split of the Nazi Party, and he's also very cautious and very conscious, that the army are not big fans of the SA. And Hitler is more than happy to side with the army on this one, because Hitler needs their loyalty and their support if Hitler is to have complete and total control of Germany. So in June 1934, the SS, who are the new force in the Nazi Party, raids leaders of the SA. They take Ernst Röhm into custody, force him to commit suicide, but he doesn't, so they shoot him. As well as 400 other political opponents. Majority of them are the SA or SA leaders, but other people such as Kurt von Schleicher is killed along with them. So it wasn't just the SA who were killed in Nazi Long Knives, they also used that opportunity to get rid of quite a lot of other political opponents. So the world media obviously hears about this, but there's very little information leaked out. I mean, Kurt von Schleicher is quite a prominent person to have killed, but ultimately there's not much done about it on the worldwide scene. So the SA is gone. They're still around, they still use it, but the SS is now in charge, really. Hitler's personal bodyguard, and we'll speak about the SS in another video. So the only remaining thing in Hitler's way is the support of the German people, of course, but that's again a different story. And Paul von Hindenburg, the president of the Weimar government. Well, on the 2nd of August 1934, the rather aging Paul von Hindenburg dies. And whilst this is happening, Hitler passes laws to abolish the offices of Reichstag Chancellor and President and combine it into one office, the Führer, which is what Hitler makes himself. And the army now swears total loyalty and obedience to Adolf Hitler, who is the Führer of Germany. So there's no longer Reich President, there's no longer Chancellor, that's been disbanded. So within 18 months, Hitler was able to destroy the Weimar government. And very little of it he did, well, I say very little. Most of what he achieved, he did it through legal means. He passed the Enabling Act, you could argue with rather suspect legal means, but he passes it by using the Weimar government against the Weimar government. And by August 1934, he is in complete control of Germany. Thank you very much.